I have expertise that nobody on the board has.
Welcome to the Voter Interest Project's candidate interviews for 2024. I'm Alan McPheeters, the Executive Director of the Voter Interests Project. In 2024, voters in Island County will elect county commissioners for District 1, Central and South Whidbey, and District 2, Oak Harbor. 7 candidates filed to run for these 3 seats during filing week in May. We've invited all of these men and women to make their case in our second annual candidate interview series. We also have extensive coverage of these candidates on our website, voterinterests.com. The following interview is with Wanda Grone, a Republican from Langley, who's running for county commissioner in District 1. We provided a list of potential questions to Mrs. Grone in advance of the interview. All right, well, good evening. Today is Monday, July the 8th, and we're here with Wanda Grone, who is running for Island County Commissioner in District 1. Wanda, welcome to the Voter Interest Project.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you getting everybody some time to listen to their candidates.
Yes, well, there's so few opportunities to hear. You did a candidate forum, last Tuesday night, right?
Correct. Yep.
And that forum lasted maybe an hour?
I think it was an hour and a half. Yeah, they actually ran out of questions.
But there were 4 of you there, which means when you take away the question asking time, you talk for maybe 20 minutes. That's actually pretty long for a candidate. So those kinds of opportunities are pretty rare. So that's why we put together this.
Yeah, that was actually very well organized. I think they did a lot of planning and had their questions lined up, and all the candidates behaved and stopped talking when they were supposed to.
Oh, wow, that's great. Well, I'm hoping, they told me that they were recording it. I don't know if it was audio or video, but
audio, I think. Yeah,
audio. As soon as they have that recording available, we're going to be sharing that on the website, so giving people another opportunity to hear from all candidates. So, but let's start out today. Oh, first, actually, I should ask, I always do, where are you? Are you at home? Are you in an office? Or where are you?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where are you? Are you at home? Are you in?
I'm at home. Yes.
Very good.
Yep. Well, since it's 8:30 at night, hopefully that's where I am.
We did an interview last year with Chris Wittgenstein, city councilman up here in Oak Harbor. He was at his office, and I think we were on this time slot. A few days ago, we talked with Gary Ray. He was outside of his house in Coopville. So always nice to kind of figure out where you are. Let's open with some biographical stuff, just sort of to set the stage to let people know who you are. So,
okay.
Married.
So I've had a very active work life. I am married. I have 1 daughter. Grew up in Seattle, Tucson, Houston, then back to Seattle again in 1993. We bought a second home on Whidbey in 2006. Came here for a job in 2011. And relocated to Coopville, and then I moved to the Bayview area down here by Good Cheer in 2015.
Very good.
My education, I have a BBA from the University of Texas at Austin. I then went back to school at the University of Houston for some more accounting hours so I could sit for the CPA exam. Took the exam, passed it the first time, which only 5% of the people who take it do that.
Wow.
And then I got licensed afterwards as a CPA. And I passed the Certified Fraud Examiner exam in 2005. So both those certifications are still current. I have more than 40 years of accounting, finance, and economic analysis experience with both private and public industry. I did some forensic accounting work back around 2000 for 7 years, wrote some reports, and actually testified as an expert witness in 1 case. When I was treasurer, I ran for 8 years, elected for 2 terms. Second was unopposed. And when I was doing that, I ran a government portfolio. The investment portfolio was $250 million for the Island County.
Wow.
And its district. So I'm just going to merge on until you tell me to stop. So when I was in the treasurer's office, some of the things I accomplished were improving the department's efficiency by incorporating a lot of technology. The previous person who was treasurer kind of resisted that. I cross-trained all the staff and reorganized some of the job duties and job descriptions to make it more efficient. Also set up some career opportunities and career paths as much as I could within the union contracts For the people who worked there, as a result, I had very good staff retention. One person left the office as soon as I took office. She had been supporting the previous treasurer, so she left the first day I was there. Even counting her, I only lost 2 employees during that time of 8
Wow.
years. So that's pretty good considering the staff retention at the county is very low right now. As a matter of fact, somebody in the planning department was telling me that in the past year, they'd had a 50% turnover, and all of those people had been hired in 2023.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty high. So the other thing I did, streamline processes for the business customers, again, using technology. I added online conveniences for payment, for property taxes and dog licenses, and also for excise processing. That made things so much faster, and it didn't take so much staff time. So after all those efficiencies were incorporated, I was actually able to put a full-time deputy over on Camano Island, which was a first because they didn't have one over there. And of course, because that's a third of our area.
Mhm.
And I think it's almost a third of our population, not quite a third, because that district's also North Whidbey, but there are a lot of people live over there and they deserve to have somebody over there to help them, whether
Sure.
it's property taxes or excise processing or whatever. So
Very
that
good.
worked out really well. I
So,
saved the county a lot of money on payroll with the investment pool by charging some of those expenses to the pool, which came out of the investment management fee. Set up payment plans, and help people avoid foreclosure by offering them alternative payment arrangements and notifying them far enough in advance, like a couple of years, that they were coming up to the danger point.
huh. So
Yeah.
we had a conversation. Actually, I've talked with Jill Johnson a couple of times about the job of county commissioner.
Mhm.
And 4 years ago, she said, especially for her in District 2, not the district you're running for, but because so much of her district is the city of Oak Harbor, and a lot of decisions are made locally there, that her job was almost entirely administrative. There really wasn't a lot of policy. And clearly, with your background in the treasurer's office, that is something you have a lot of experience with. But she said that since they hired a county administrator, that a lot of that administrative burden has been lifted, and the commissioner's job is more of a policy job. So, what is your sense? And I don't have a good sense. My understanding of what treasurers do is pretty small. Are there policy decisions that you make as the treasurer? What do you have a background in making those kinds of decisions too?
Policies with regard to the handling of money is what it is,
Sure.
because the treasurer acts as the bank.
Right.
The auditor does all the accounting, but the 2 departments do interact quite a bit. The treasurer also interacts extensively with the assessor's office.
Sure.
So we have to put together policies between treasurer and assessor, and between treasurer and auditor. And I wrote quite a few of those while I was there. As far as the job being administrative, I don't care what district you're in. I think it's evolved to that point. It's not political like it was like it has been. It was many years ago, and a lot of that's because of the requirements of the Public Meeting Act, because the commissioners can't speak with each other.
Right.
2 is a majority, and that's for conducting business. They can create decisions. So part of the reason for hiring an administrator, there were many, but part of the reason is to have somebody who can communicate between the commissioners and help them formulate a procedure for going forward, or a plan for going forward when they're discussing some major point or something to be accomplished. Another thing about the county administrator is that the county administrator currently monitors the internal facing departments,
Mhm.
that being IT, GSA, facilities,
HR, I mentioned.
HR, yes, all the general services administration, public records, everything that's under that, civil defense. And I think some of the planning department duties are now under the county administrator. But that's relatively recent. So I would say 6 months ago, it was everything except the elected official departments, which of course is treasurer, auditor, sheriff, assessor, coroner, and the Superior Court clerk. Those are independent elected officials, so they run their own departments. But Public Works, Department of Health, Human Services, and Planning did report directly to the county commissioners. So that was a lot of different people reporting to them. And I think that's been resolved to some extent by having the county administrator. However, I still think that there are some problems, and we can get into this later if we broach the topic from a different standpoint. But I think that it's still not very functioning completely as it should. I think that there are department heads that go around the county administrator to go straight to the commissioners because that's a way to get what they want.
Right.
And it's been like that for some time. It was like that when they hired the first county administrator, who she was an administrative services director, but basically handling the internal facing departments. Everybody just went around her and went straight to the commissioners. So she left after 6 months.
Wow.
And then, I don't know, was it 6 months, a year later, they hired Michael Jones.
So, I mean, on the whole, since you have experience in county government, do you think that hiring a county administrator was a good idea or not?
I don't know. I think it depends on who the county commissioners are and what their strengths are. You ask about the experience of a treasurer. I have expertise that nobody on the board has. The county administrator probably has some as an offset, but he's admitted to me he doesn't have that kind of background. He has knowledge, but it just gives you a different way of looking at things. And there have been decisions made the county, I think, that could have been better if financial considerations had been taken more into account. Some people just don't think in terms of money. I mean, I'm not saying I have all the strengths in the world, but I do have that one. And I think it's a good one to have because governments operate on the flow of money. Money comes in and money goes out. If they don't have money and it's all public money, then they can't operate.
Sure.
So money's important.
Do you have a example in mind of where there wasn't enough consideration paid to the financial consequences of the decision?
Sure. Well, the one that comes to mind first of all would be the purchase of the Harbor Inn in Freeland. That was a very rushed transaction. They didn't have an appraisal. They didn't have the appraisal had been ordered, but there was a rush to fund it supposedly because the owner wanted his money, but because what was paid for the facility was so much higher. I don't know, 10 times higher. I don't remember what the difference was, but it was much, much higher than how it was appraised. The county wanted to wire $1.5 million, and it was rush, rush, rush. A group opposing the purchase had trying to file an injunction because it hadn't come through the court yet. The process couldn't be stopped. I was told you have to wire the money because it hadn't come before a judge yet. The title company handling the transaction originally even backed out of it because they had heard that the injunction had been filed. So it was then shifted by Lehigh to a different title company out of somewhere on the East Coast rather than somebody local. So
I should mention for viewers, Lehigh is the Low Income Housing Institute, and they're based in Seattle.
Seattle, correct. It was just a very rushed transaction. I don't know what the hurry was, but that was the way it turned out. And years went by before the facility became functional for a variety of reasons, and that's a different subject. But I don't think that all the documentation was done correctly. I don't think the research was done correctly. And somebody was pushing for that to be done. As much as the property was sold for over what it was appraised at, I don't think that there were any other buyers out there that were offering that kind of money. So there was really no rush to get that transaction financially concluded.
Interesting. And the county's piece of that was a grant, if I remember right, of about $1.5 million. Is that right?
Right. It came out of affordable housing funds or homeless housing funds or something. There's a separate fund from recording fees, I believe, is where that money was drawn.
So now,
and, talk about other financial considerations for decisions that were made. There are a lot of grant funded programs at the county, and there's a common misconception that grants are free money. I've heard that over and over again. Oh, there's all that free money out there, and I want it all for Island County. And I won't repeat who said that, but it was one of our current commissioners. That grant money is not free. That comes out of all our pockets. It's taxpayer dollars. And yes, it's nice to have funding for projects, but they usually require a match. They usually require hiring other people. Sometimes when the grant's over with, the positions still continue to exist and the county takes over funding them 100%. My qualm with this whole process is a lot of those grant funded projects are not evaluated for whether they're providing as much benefit as the cost, especially after they end. They just tend to hang on, and the extra positions that have been filled and equipment that's been purchased continues to cost the county money. When I first came to the county in 2011 as chief deputy, there were between 350 and 400 employees. Now there are almost 550, and I see almost every work session, I see more positions being added. And many of those are grant funded. So that's expanded government. And I think there are a lot of people that understand maybe it's not the best thing for all of us to have more government.
Right. Well, and I know this is outside the scope of the county commissioners, but we're seeing all the school districts going through difficult financial times. And it's from the outside. I haven't watched all the school board meetings, but my sense of it is that they planned a lot of spending on dollars that were coming through grants or programs like the pandemic relief, that it was foreseeable it would go away.
Or larger student populations, because the funding model is they get paid per student.
Right.
And when their student population declines, and obviously there are a lot of reasons that happens, not available housing, it's too expensive to live there,
Sure.
Or maybe parents don't want to send their kids to public schools anymore, so they send them to private schools. But regardless, the people who still have their children in public schools just want the same teacher, student ratios to be maintained. And that's not going to happen because the funding model is different. So then, they talk to the legislature and say, well, we want more dollars for schools. We're all underfunded. It's
Right.
the same circle. And that's what McCleary was set up to resolve. But unfortunately, some of the larger school districts got hurt by that, lost some of their money. They weren't happy with it. So they went back to the legislature and said, we need more money. And what did the legislature do? They caved.
Yeah.
So the whole McCleary decision's gotten all turned around and entirely lost what it was trying to resolve.
Right. But is that same mechanism, grant money funding, initially funding positions, and then that grant money goes away? Is that a problem at the county level as well?
I think it has been. Of course, the school funding model is strictly property taxes,
Right.
that. And you're right. So the schools do apply for some grants, maybe for equipment or things like that, but their main funding comes from the state through property taxes.
Right. Okay. So what, it's a big job. There's a lot of things going on at the county right now, from the small to the large, from fireworks to the comprehensive plan. What do you see as the biggest thing that you're going to have to deal with if you're elected? What is the big problem that you're going to have to find a solution to?
So there are several, as you can imagine. And each commissioner's got their special area of special interest. I think that staff retention is a big issue. I think that the comp plan update's a big issue. That of course involves several smaller things. Everything from the infrastructure planning and housing development probably is the largest thing, but then under that you have, okay, you can't have housing development until you have water and sewer infrastructure. You need to plan for the increased population, how it's been decreed to be divided up between the 3 municipalities, and what can be done in the county still on 5-acre lots. And then, we have a large percentage of our population that wants to be able to sustain what they call their rural character. Right. Okay, I get that, but we still have to have housing for service workers. As you know, I think I forgot to mention, but I'm working as a finance director for the city of Langley. I've been there since January of last year. I went there immediately after retiring from the treasurer's office to help them out with some accounting and finance problems. So they have very limited financial resources because they're a small city. Most revenues that come down from the state go through the county. And the things that come to Langley, even like the sales taxes that Langley votes in, are shared by statute with the county. The county gets 15%. Even if the city of Langley adopts a 1% sales tax, 15% of that automatically goes to the county. So the ones that go through the county that are supposed to be shared with the cities are allocated on a per capita basis. So Coopville's got about 1,830, 1,850 people. Langley has 1,150. Well, you can imagine that what comes down to the city of Langley is very little, and it's population based. So
Yeah.
they just don't, I mean, here we're supposed, Langley's supposed to be adopting or adding 440 some odd housing units in the next 20 years. Where is that money going to come from? You know, there is some infrastructure there. They're undergoing a project to replace a lot of the aging pipes in the sewer and water system. And that's going to cost a lot of money. So they put out bonds. They have a public works board loan, and they have a grant from the county, $3 million grant from the county. But I mean, I don't think that will be enough money to actually extend the sewer to places that could accommodate 400 additional units. And that's what it's going to have to be. It's going to have to, most of it's going to be within the existing boundaries, meaning more density. Some of it's in sensitive areas.
Right.
And I think I got off topic from your question. Oh, what were the issues? So comp plan update, that's
But
all part
actually,
of the
before
development.
we leave that, I was
Yeah,
for context, and tell me if I've got these numbers right. That's 440 odd new houses over the next 20 years by 2045.
that's population, I think. Is
440.
that population or is it housing? Okay,
I
housing
think
units.
housing
Okay.
units.
Okay, yep,
And
you're right.
the current housing base in Langley is only about 700 housing units, if I
Something
remember.
like that, you're right.
So the tiny city of Langley is being asked to grow by more than 50% to
Right,
accommodate this. That's very tough.
right. Well, obviously, some of that has to be multifamily.
Yes, it would have to be. But is there even space in the city limits to put in that many new units?
So that the planning department's been working on that, that what they do, I guess, first is, and I'm not a planner, do a buildable lands analysis
Right.
and then work from that basis. And then surrounding the city, of course, is it, or on one, at least one or two sides of the city is the joint planning area that is negotiable, I guess, for future development between the city of Langley and the county.
Right.
And
Okay.
Langley, excuse me, also has the opportunity to expand its boundaries.
Okay. I had not considered this. There are four people in your race. You are the only one I'm aware of who has worked at the municipality that's in your district, actually,
Right.
both Langley and Coopville are, which I think would probably be a benefit to you as a county commissioner. Okay, let's go back to the other things you think might be big problems that you're going to have to address over the next 4 years.
Yeah. So, like I started to say, a lot of people want to maintain the rural character, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But we have to have housing for service workers. Otherwise, you know, our businesses can't survive. A lot of the businesses in Langley and around Langley and in Freeland can't exist without service help.
Right.
And unless there's somewhere for those people to live, they're not all going to be taking ferries or driving from Oak Harbor. Unfortunately, that's what's happening now. And it doesn't last because, I mean, you know what the ferry's like these days. A lot of them don't run at all or they're late. And that just doesn't, it's not compatible with a good workforce schedule,
Sure.
especially the restaurants. They're having a terrible time. So either it's somebody running a business who's going to be basically there every single day, or they're going to keep trying to hire workers and retraining people and having people not show up and so forth. There's a lot of small businesses in Langley. You know, all the restaurants, Mona's Chocolates, the shipping facility, the store, the merchants and so forth, the hairdressers. I mean, all of those little businesses, they all need service people.
And that problem is particularly acute in District 1, which,
Right.
the only way you get onto the island in District 1 is from one ferry or the other.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, recently hired some people, but they had a heck of a time. A lot of the employees in Langley drive in from Oak Harbor. And
Wow.
that's a 30-mile drive one way.
Wow.
Let's see. So other things, staff retention, infrastructure planning, housing development. Another thing I wanted to mention about housing is that I really believe that the start can be made for especially multifamily, or workforce is such an overused term, but housing for those that work in the service industries, I think can be started by looking at surplus public lands and public-private partnerships. A developer's not going to come in uh, um, and build a neighborhood of apartments or on a parcel of land in the city somewhere, unless that it's financially feasible for them to do so.
Right.
So either the land would have to be donated or transferred at a small cost, or a grant provided, something similar to what the Habitat for Humanity model is, where the land is given to them by a grant, and then they provide a lot of the volunteer construction, and then there's sweat equity provided by the potential homeowner in the house.
Sure.
And I mean, even those are not available for very low income workers. Manufactured home parks or trailer parks would be another solution. And I'm not saying that's right for Langley, but I mean, if you're talking about very inexpensive housing, that's almost what it would have to be.
Well, so that brings us to the Port of South Whidbey's plan to put workforce
Mhm.
housing at the fairgrounds. What are you thinking about that?
Well, they presented one design concept. The Fairgrounds Association didn't like it because it altered the size of the midway.
Right.
There's so many factors there that still have to be, that people have to come together. Not just public servants, not just people who work for governments, but maybe some private uh, entrepreneurs, or maybe the school district gets involved. It requires all of these parties coming together, maybe with some private developer expertise, to make this work. All I can say is, I think it's very important, and I think the port at the fairgrounds is a great place to start, even for the first project. And once the first project's completed or started, even if it's 14 bedrooms or whatever it is, it's something.
Yeah.
And then, that once the first one's been done, I think the ones that come after that will be easier. The port's mandate is to provide an economic development and industrial development. There's really no place for industrial development around Langley, but there is area for development down the marina. I think they're working on a passenger ferry over the Port of Everett. Is one of the projects they're talking about. They're still trying to figure out how to use the fairgrounds to provide better sustainable income year round. Although it needs to be used for the county fair, or excuse me, the Whidbey Island Fair during the month or the week that it happens, and some other events during the year. But they also have some year-round tenants. And I think the best idea for the port and for the community as a whole would be to be able to use that property for something other than just the once a year events.
Right.
Because if the port can make money on rentals and events being there, they will have the money to fix the fair buildings. And that's the biggest complaint. The port's got all this money, $200,000 a year from property tax revenues, but all they're doing is patching things that are very old and very broken.
Right.
So they will continue working on some kind of a design concept for multifamily housing somewhere on the fairgrounds. And I think that will be a great start. And I really want to help them get involved with that and bring people together, because I think there's some very good ideas out there, especially from private enterprise, of how to get that done.
Sure. Well, we pay attention to all the municipalities and all the other districts in the county. And I remember I want to say it was last year, maybe it was even the year before, in the later part of the year, there was this whole Coles Valley plan development at the city of Langley. And I think it was the year before, because I think it was when I went on vacation to Paris for 3 weeks at the end, right after Thanksgiving. And I heard a lot about it before then, and then crickets when I got back.
So it's there. It's come to life again.
Ah,
And it goes back and forth between the planning department and the developer, giving information. There's permit review, so it is very much still in process.
very good. And that, if I remember right, that was something on the order of 100 units.
Yeah, I think it changes. I'm sorry, I don't know the specifics.
Yeah, that's all right. It's a good start on the 400 Langley has to come up with. Oh man, just looked up at my clock and we're down to the last 90 seconds, so we probably should wrap this up. If people want to get hold of you, find out more about what you want to do, or help out with your campaign, what's the best way for them to reach you? On your website or Facebook? Or
So I do have a website. I'm not very good about keeping it up. Facebook, it's Elect Wanda Grone, I think is the Facebook page. I have my own personal page on there as well. Basically, there's some other things, I really wanted to talk about we didn't have time to talk about, but I really think that things could be done a little bit better at the county in terms of making decisions. I think that some of the department head appointments the positions weren't posted. I think that every time a government has an open position, they should publish it, post it, along with the qualifications required. And if they, education required, and if they hire somebody who isn't qualified, they need to specify in writing to the public why they chose to hire somebody or put somebody in that position that didn't meet the qualifications.
Sure. Well,
Otherwise,
no,
to
we're
me, it
not.
seems like cronyism or favoritism.
Oh, well, now that is interesting enough. We're not locked in at this amount of time. Do you have a particular example in mind
Well,
that you can
yeah,
say?
I have a few because I was there for a while, as you know.
Sure.
So, and I'm not pointing any fingers. It's just, I mean, maybe they considered this and it just wasn't publicized. But when Mary Engel moved over from the assessor's office to the planning department, she was serving both offices at once, being paid for both. And she eventually was put in the position of being planning director, but they never really posted that position.
Right.
There were requirements. The person had to have a certain educational degree, a degree in community planning development, and they had to have certification as a certified planner. And my understanding was that that was to be completed by Mary within a year of her appointment. And I don't know that it ever was.
Oh,
As you know now, she is, it has been placed in a new position as building code rewriter or rewriting the building code. Another position that didn't exist. The job was never posted. Qualifications were never listed. There's no job description. A friend of mine did a public records request asking for that. They said there was no such thing. So that's a pretty good example right there. And my personal feeling, and again, I'm not qualified to say this, but it seems like when somebody's doing something like rewriting a building code, that it almost should be done by a committee or a commission of some type with experts maybe from out in the field, like builders
right.
or other outside planning commissioners as part of that committee. I'm not. I don't understand why one person who would be rewriting it, one person who was previously the planning director, but that didn't get done while she was in that position.
Right.
Those are
Yeah.
just questions.
Sure.
The human services director, when she was appointed, she was moved up from the assistant. I don't think that job was ever posted. The personnel manager, the personnel director, the GSA director, I think those positions were ever posted. If they were, I missed them. They were just listed maybe for 3 days.
Wow.
So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the people that they appointed. Just did they try to look outside for people who had come from other counties, maybe, or people who had private industry experience in those areas? I mean, that's when I hired people in my department. I realized it's a different level of responsibility, but you advertise it to the public.
Right.
I mean, gee whiz, when I was hired as chief deputy, she had run the ad for several weeks, looking for a chief deputy. Couldn't find anybody she liked, so she looked outside and posted ads in outside the county newspapers. And I happened to see it. I'd never had any government experience, and I'm who she hired. So I brought all those private ideas to government, and wow, they were way behind. So that was, I mean, people who have worked in private industry have a lot of maybe more modern technology experience.
Right.
How that can be used to save time and money.
Sure.
And maybe resources that the government isn't aware of. The government tends to be kind of cloistered.
Yeah, in my day job, I work for a company that does business intelligence software for very large law firms. And law firms, I think, are probably similar to government in that they're a little technology diverse, a little slow.
Mhm.
They're not early adopters, generally speaking, and they've had problems because of that. So I can see where that would be an issue for local government. God,
So this
we
is
could go on
all
for
about
hours.
efficiency and how money's spent. I just want to drop a word in really quickly about conservation futures and
Sure.
development. I wrote a letter to the editor right after I started the letter at the city of Langley, and told them I'd written it. The newspaper called me and said, "Can we run this as a sound off?" I said, "I guess. What does that mean?" She says, "As an editorial." I said, "Sure, whatever." So my thought was just the Whidbey Camino Land Trust and other private organizations have created these areas of, preservation for natural resources all over the county. And while it's true that maybe the total percentage over the whole county may be 5 or 10%, but I think the percentage would be different if you looked at what percentage it was related to the available land that's not already built. Some of those areas that went into conservation could have been used for housing development. So I don't know if they were buildable or not, but just for example, Trillium Forest, and I don't think that was a Whidbey Camino Land Trust thing. Maybe it was, I don't remember. That was originally going to be developed into houses. The area just south of Admiral's Cove off of the highway, south of Coopville, right next to Admiral's Cove, was owned by a private person, and the Whidbey Camino Land Trust just purchased that. And partially, it was mostly with private donations, but they're getting grants to fund some of the renovation they want to do, I guess, inside. Part of those grants are coming from Conservation Futures. So obviously that's right next to Admiral's Cove. It's right on the shore. It's similar terrain. Part of it's already been forested, or timber taken down. You see, I would just think that some of that could have been used for development.
Sure.
So my concern is, especially in areas that border areas that already have development, is, are we conserving every piece of land or lots of the land that could be used for housing? That isn't $1 million per house or $2 million per house. There's a lot of houses in Admiral's Cove that, now they're selling in the 500s, but when I first moved up here, they were in the $250,000, $300,000 range. That would have been great housing for workers, for people from the military base.
Sure.
Those kinds of things. So I just think that we need to look at conservation futures come from property tax dollars. We all pay those with our property taxes, our houses, our property that we own. So we need to question whether or not those conservation futures monies are still being used wisely, or is it possible that they're hampering some kind of development? Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in 10 years. And once those things get a conservation easement on them, sometimes that's into perpetuity, and it's never going to be available for development.
Right. Well,
so I think there needs to be a top-down review of that whole process.
You've seen this in the voter interest newsletter, but most of the people who watch this will not have. We've been measuring that the amount of land the Whidbey Camino Land Trust has under their protection, and it is something on the order of about 5% of the total land area of Island County. I hadn't considered it in the framework of as a percentage of buildable land or non-built land. But the question arises, well, how much land needs to be conserved? Right. Is it 1 acre out of every 20? Is it 1 out of every 10? As far as we can tell, both the Conservation Futures Fund and the Whidbey Camino Land Trust has no cap on what they will protect.
Well, also take a look sometime at the Whidbey Camino Land Trust holdings and see how much of it's not public access.
Right. There's
and maybe that's because it's environmentally sensitive. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the case everywhere. So it just warrants a look, it warrants a review.
Sure. Very good. Well, really appreciate your taking the time, Wanda. I think this has been very helpful, and hopefully people get some useful information from here. So like I said before we started recording, I will let you know when we have this ready to put up. And thank you for taking part in our series.
Yeah, appreciate you working with me. Sorry that it took a couple scheduling attempts, but that was great. I really appreciate it. You're providing a great service, Alan.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Have a good evening.
And you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching our interview with Wanda Grone, who's running for Island County Commissioner in District 1. We invite you to subscribe to our newsletter, available in 4 local editions: Camino Island, North Whidbey, Central Whidbey, and South Whidbey. The newsletter arrives in your mailbox every Monday morning with news and events from your part of Island County. Subscribe to our newsletter at voterinterests.com/subscribe. And look for more of these candidate interviews as the election season continues. Thank you.